Hi there. I don't normally do advanced spoiler-free reviews of House of the Dragon even when episodes leak, but enough of us were yelling about this that I feel compelled to. I'm not going to give you a link or anything, it's a matter of hours. I'm recording this Sunday morning. Yes, right away at the beginning of the episode, they address why didn't Rhaenys just burn everyone? That they ask her that, well, why didn't you burn them? And they give an explanation. And this is it's not so much the episode as a meta commentary I'm making on the fandom reaction that had they aired these two episodes back to back, it would not have resulted in the massive backlash we saw. It's a little clunky, but they gave a decent explanation, or one that functions in universe. That they didn't just forget that was our nightmare scenario, and I said this in my review for last episode. If they don't address it at all, this will be like Benioff and Weiss, and it's insane that you just did it to be cool. They do give an in-universe reason for why she didn't do that. And I'm really upset at how much people have been yelling at Sarah Hess for that, the writer of this, and I think it's just bigoted people need to yell at her. And the interview she gave where she was kind of flippant about it, I think she was joking, and the other thing is because it was a text interview, I think because it was with the Hollywood Reporter guy, who we know gives bad interviews, I think he may have edited it poorly from what she actually said. I have no idea. But it's weird how people who weren't complaining about, Sarah Hess also did episode 6, who weren't complaining about episode 6, suddenly were really yelling about episode 6 things like, and they didn't explain why Kristen wasn't punished. And that's a macro scale problem for the entire season, but not for the scriptwriter of episode 6 itself. That it's weird just how much it went from people yelling about the Rhaenys thing, where there were legitimate criticisms of this isn't clear in this episode on its own. It turned into people really looking for things to yell about for her. And I feel really embarrassed at how much everyone yelled, given that they give a decent explanation in this episode right at the beginning. It's what I was hoping. Okay, they give a decent explanation, and we can move on. Not going into spoiler detail, but I will say I don't even consider that a separate problem. When I was listing points of concern about Season 1, and I said point 1 is a catch-all for they needed more episodes, like the Kristen thing, episode 8 needed more time. It really just falls into, I see what you were doing, but you needed to set it up with a few more scenes that may have been cut for time to clearly explain why she was doing that. But it's not incoherent. It really isn't. That they do, it's just, it's a big feeling I got from the last episode was you really feel this season needed more episodes, or it should have been two, like Breaking Bad's final season was a season and a half. It was 16 episodes split into two batches. That there should have been more time. I will say that this doesn't feel like what Benioff and Weiss did, where like season 5 and even season 6 and other stuff, where they were racing through things and cramming things into episodes because they wanted to be done with them. They were burning through material because they wanted to leave. This is the opposite of that, and look at episode 8. Great example of that. We're looking through the interviews and everything that the writer gave. I've already talked about this for the episode 8 review. In contrast to season 5, we're just burning through material we don't want to cover. This was someone who really cared about the material, all of season 1. People who really cared about the material were trying really hard to cram it into a single episode as best as possible, as coherently as possible, given those time limitations. That whereas Benioff and Weiss were just rushing through things, this is someone who was trying, like Gita Patel was talking about, like there were Daemon auto scenes at the feast, and we had to leave them on the cutting room floor. There wasn't enough time for them. Because I had a limited amount of time that the episode was supposed to run. It couldn't be like 2 hours. That episode 10 feels like that again, much as episode 9, that you feel there should have been more scenes in this, and there probably were, that they cut for pacing and time reasons. Not in a bad way, though, because episode 8 we're saying is the best episode of the season, arguably, and you can still tell this should have been, episode 8 should have been 2 episodes. So the rainy stuff, that's all just, I lump it in with, you should have given more time to stuff. I have 3 things that are my complaints at the end of season, well, not complaints. Point 1 is a catch-all. There should have been 3 more episodes. George R. R. Martin said there should have been 3 more episodes. And the other 2 things aren't even, like, point 2 is, it's a big change that Laenor is still alive, and you need to address that because, well, then, isn't he bonded with Seasmoke? How will Seasmoke take a new rider? We'll have to see in season 2 because they don't address that in this episode. I mean, they mention Seasmoke when they're listing off, these are the dragons that don't have riders right now, but it doesn't come up again. And the third point was the lighting issues in episode 7 with Sapochnik, which is, they were trying to cover up continuity errors, that it was an exterior location, filming on a beach, there were a lot of storms, and continuity-wise, the waves had changed so much, they said, well, let's use the day for night thing to darken it to the point you can't see that there's visual continuity errors in it, because the landscape, and it's, no, we would have accepted that more than darkening it. You traded one problem for a worse problem. But that's an isolated incident, that isn't a structural problem, that's you were trying too hard to cover something up, but those are 2 issues, they're not long-running issues, that the thing everyone's been saying, I'm already seeing summaries of the season on other news sites, is that particularly the second half of the season burned through this really fast. But unlike, say, Game of Thrones Season 5, they were trying to cover it as best as possible in only 5 episodes. And really, keep thinking this episode 8 where they artfully put everything in there. So, episode 10 moves pretty fast, and they have to set up next episode, so a lot of it is talking about, they've never really talked about before, the other great houses. But this is what happens in the books, I don't really think it's a spoiler, just they go, okay, these are the great houses we'll side with, these are the ones that are on the fence, and they explain that very quickly while pointing at a map. It's great when you point at a map. You've seen this in the promo shots. They're looking at the painted table on Dragonstone and going, okay, this is the Starks, this is the Aarons, this is the Lannisters. They didn't do that nearly as much in episode 9 with the Green Council. I mean, they mention, the only one they really go in is the Baratheons, that, well, the Baratheons, if they have daughters, we can make a marriage alliance. In the book, they sort of repeat them, so I can see why I said the Green Council scene was kind of short. It's all of the exposition I was expecting at the Green Council, they give at the Black Council, of beyond the Targaryens themselves, which great houses are going to side with who, and who do we need to win to our side. And I can see how in a TV show this would have been redundant. So they give, it's about 8 minutes worth of stuff split into 2 scenes. There's like a 3-minute scene, then a 5-minute scene, where they're pointing at the painted table and going, this is what the war is going to be like, and who sided with who. And I liked it, but I don't know, I can't tell if this was good exposition for a TV-only audience. I will say, it's weird how worked up we got about the Rhaenys thing. I was going to make a whole video about it. I've canceled that because they give a good explanation. Well, a functional explanation. And an interesting thought experiment is if you had a TV-only viewer who binged on the same day, watched back-to-back, because they're behind an episode, find someone who watched episode 9 and 10 back-to-back for the first time, they really wouldn't have been annoyed about this. It was just weird that they ended on, why the heck didn't she kill them? That doesn't make sense. Then they explain, there should have been more scenes setting this up, but they give a decent explanation, so I'm not really worried about it. And I like to hope that with the passage of time, the really vitriolic fandom arguments about this in the past week, this will fade with time, because they give a decent explanation for it. Okay? So that's why I'm making this advanced thing. Just, we're not fixating on that anymore. They gave a thing, we're moving on. much like episode 8, which was a great episode, it felt like they were cramming a lot into one episode, but fitting it in very well. That there are no wasted scenes. Everything is really tight. You could complain that, well, they don't give every character enough to do. That, yeah, this should have been a full season. Remember when I was the crazy one a year ago saying, and this is why the Rogue Prince novella should be split into 2 seasons. There's too much material for one season of 10 episodes. And everyone's going, yeah. It's like that thing from Jurassic Park. God damn it, I hate being right all the time. Just, this should have been more. And not in a bad way, it works. But I really hope that this impacts how HBO will be dealing with them in season 2, that we kind of rushed the material. We're already seeing that they used to go maybe 3, maybe 4 seasons. And I hated it when they said 3 to 4 seasons and people went, well, 3, they're stretching. We don't want to stretch it out too much. No, you have seen from season 1. It's not padding out and stretching out more things. That wasn't even the complaint in Game of Thrones. We said, dear God, you should have had at least 10 seasons and you rushed it. You need the time to tell the story right. So now, instead of, 3, maybe 4, and people going, no, 3, it can't be stretched out. That isn't what we're facing at all. You've seen that demonstrated. And George R. R. Martin in his blog post said, this needs at least 4 seasons of 10 episodes to tell it right. So I'm still arguing you need 5 seasons. Or 3 more seasons of 13 episodes each or something. That it needs to be more than another 30 episodes to fit this story in. Not sure. So, going into episode 10, just the Rhaenys thing wasn't an issue. Obviously, there was the Alicent isn't in it. You can see that from the credits. The big change to the season was that they made Alicent and Rhaenyra childhood friends, which it mentions in the source they were friendly at first before Aegon was born. That they knew each other. A lot of this is extrapolated. This is talking about episode 9 now, that Alicent isn't this bloodthirsty person. She's not Cersei, and they emphasize that. I've already talked about that's more of a macro issue. And I was on the fence about it. I've come around to it for episode 9, that, yeah, even in the books, Alicent is the one arguing for, no, we're not going to assassinate them, we'll use diplomacy. We'll try to outmaneuver them, show them their cause is lost, and have them surrender bloodlessly by giving them generous peace terms. That they're overemphasizing a little that Alicent isn't Cersei, but then again, they could easily fall into the trope of the wicked stepmother. I'm happy they didn't. So that's what we're doing looking ahead to episode 10. And I'm going to make not just episode 10 recap tonight, looking ahead to the future, because we are not going to get season 2 in 2023. We are going to get it in 2024. It's a question of in spring or summer of 2024. I had to pause all of my analysis videos to work on just episode recaps, and I'm going to make a video on I'm terrified everyone's going to leave now, when the better scenario was so many people were unwilling to watch to watch season 1, that I think from now through Christmas break, a lot of people are going to be binge watching season 1 who didn't catch up with it from word of mouth. And it was already, I was surprised at how popular it was. I thought it would build up slowly. But we spent 3 years in the wilderness, and suddenly this is what everyone is talking about. I don't want this to end again. Or at least, it'll be like the lower level hum that it was at between seasons 7 and 8, but I'm not running out of things to talk about. And I want to get back to all the analysis videos that I wanted, topical videos about season 1 that I physically didn't have time to make. So I'm going to make a separate video going over that, of just what is our schedule between now and... We should start getting casting info for season 2. Real stuff we can pick apart, and the pre-season 2 analysis stuff, news for that, that'll start as early as January, maybe even late December. So, November is going to be catch-up for all of it, and I hope everyone sticks around for, okay, these are analysis videos. We'll see what happens with that. But generally, I liked episode 10. Still, my favorite episodes were episodes 1, 3, 4, and 8, but there was never a bad episode this season. So stick around for the full recap tonight.